Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Welcome to the Sunday chat, as it's called. This is a regular, well, yeah, every Sunday, when I can. There are occasions when I can't. But basically, a quick explanation. I'm fully aware that there are new people to the channel, which was the objective of changing the style of the channel back in mid-February. I did that. So everything since then is a new style, even if you didn't notice it. The objective was to get more searchable videos, better thumbnails, and to encourage more people to follow the channel, so new subscribers and all that. And there are people that follow the channel that don't subscribe. They're still new people, and new people might not understand the history of the channel, which goes back a lot of years. The Sunday chat is a regular, and it is by definition a chatty one. Sometimes I look at some orchids, sometimes there's a very specific subject that I go over. Sometimes I do a spotlight on an individual orchid, I do a report on a show I may have visited. There's all sorts of things that will be encompassed into the Sunday chat, as it's called. Consequently, it's often quite a long one. And somewhere in the Sunday chat I always do my thank yous for my subscribers and my followers, etc., which we will do later. And for those of you who don't know, I have a chatty cat who makes an awful lot of noise and he's just woken up. He's been sat in the sun on the sofa in there, it comes in the window for part of the day. Anyway, for those of you who didn't see it, I put a video on the Gardening and Bonsai channel, and again for new people, I run two channels. This one is the orchid one, which is based in here, the grow room, and another one which is about my bonsai trees and my garden, which was a right mess when I got here and covers planting and growing things in the garden. Let me just let nuisance out. There we go. He'll make a fuss to come back in about 30 seconds, I expect. Anyway, I put a video on the other channel for something quite major that's going to go on in the garden shortly, and I'll take the camera down and quickly do that. So just wobble around for a minute while I get the camera off the tripod and get it on my hand, and in doing so I managed to press the record button and turn it off. Anyway, it's back on now. That's another thing I will mention. I don't retake, I don't do edits. You won't see any of these what I call shadow people, where a person's in one position and halfway through a sentence they move slightly. It's where it's been edited. I don't do that. If I say it wrong, I say it wrong. I either repeat it or you'll have to make it up as you go along. Anyway, all this lot here is to make some bonsai staging, or most of it is. And I spent Friday at my son's place where he's got access to a woodworking workshop. So, you know, bench saws, circular saws, routers, all that sort of things, drills, and a nice working environment, you know, specifically designed for working on wood. This lot is going to make 4 individual bonsai tree stands. So that's what we've got, 4 posts there, different heights, and then there are 4 tops and 4 bottoms there. Bottoms are 24 inches square, the idea being the bigger the base, the less likely they are to blow over in the wind. And then 4 tops, it's all second-hand timber, I was lucky, it's all second-hand, so I haven't paid for any of this. And the large piece is, I have a broken fence post in the garden that's held up at the moment by a piece of rope. And the idea is that large piece of timber, nice sturdy timber, will screw to the corner of the shed and onto the fence post and make the fence post rigid. So that's what that piece is for. That's the odd piece, that's nothing to do with the bonsai. And then that will give me some individual bonsai tree stands that can be positioned around the garden and become part of the garden design. and in addition to that will allow me to move individual trees around, whereas now they're on staging. If I move it, they all have to move, so that gives me a lot more choice, and it frees up the staging. Now the staging I'm on about, yeah, I said he'd be back in, didn't I? Come on, nuisance. And we'll have a song, of course. He always sings a song when he comes back in. The staging I'm on about, let me zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about, is that staging there, the slatted staging. As you can see, it's only got a few trees on the top. That staging will get freed up and become the staging which will form a very useful purpose, which swings us back round to the orchids. That will be used for my cymbidiums to put them outside for the summer. And I'm going to put casters on it so that I can move it around the area of the patio. I won't be taking it down the path into the garden, the sun's too strong out there, but the idea is the staging can go on the far side of the patio where it will get the morning sun, and then it can be moved across over here somewhere out of the sun so that it doesn't get midday sun, just early morning sun. And possibly over in that corner of the patio area that gets evening sun. It might, you know, it depends what I'm up to and whether I can be bothered to move it around. But yeah, so we will have some mobile staging for the cymbidiums for the summer months. Right, now having said I don't edit anything, I'm just going to break off so that I can put the camera back on the stand. Oh, you don't mind getting wobbled around. Start breaking it off. Well, I can just pop it back on. There we go. That way it goes back in the same place as well. Right, so that's what a bit of what's been going on, and a bit of why the orchid videos might have been a bit thin. Apologies for that. But this is a sort of one-off exercise. These pieces of wood are going to be stained, and then they'll all be screwed together to make the stands, and then I'll be rearranging the garden considerably to actually make use of those stands. And the tatty shed and fence that goes with it, including this large piece of timber here that's going to hold the fence up, that's all due to be painted soon, as long as I can get I need a run of a couple of days where I can guarantee a bit of sunshine and no rain, so that the stain can cure. So that's that. Orchid Society meeting yesterday. That was a good meeting. It was an in-house talk. We had our president and our joint chairman did a talk between them, aimed at not so much beginners, but relatively new people to the society that we gained at our previous show by doing a special offer, a sort of one-off where basically you join the society and get a free orchid on that day. So we took on quite a few people, and just as a numbers game, you know, some societies are failing, where the more elderly people, you know, and health issues, various things, their numbers are dropping off and they're not getting any new people in, so their numbers are getting low. There comes a point where they're not viable anymore because the running costs, like your hall hire, things like that, exceed your income. So, you know, some societies are not doing well. But that massive intake that we've just had secures our future for some time, providing we get to keep those people. But our meetings used to have somewhere between sort of 21, 22, and on a good day perhaps 26, 27. We had 38 yesterday, and it's a lot noisier. I was talking to one of the guys who did the talk, you know, I said, "You got a job to hear yourself thinking here." He said, "Yeah, but it's a buzz. It's an interest. It's people talking about the orchids and stuff that we never used to have." So it is good. Yeah, quite a few new people, and the talk would have been better if it was the last meeting when those people who joined at the show came to their first meeting. This would have been a good one to have because it was Phalaenopsis, and part of the talk was looking at some Phalaenopsis in the tropical environment where they grow. Somebody had actually been to, I forget where it was now, Anyway, where they grow, South America somewhere, tropical rainforest, and you know, looked at some orchids in situ and all that sort of stuff. And then the other half was the guy talking about growing Phalaenopsis in the home, you know, covered. It went through some species to bring you round to why they need certain care, and it is quite good to look at. When you look at the species and you get the temperature range, you know, daytime temperatures 24 to 28 degrees, nighttime temperatures 21, 22. And then in the winter that goes down a bit, but not much. Remember, these are tropical areas. They don't get a cold winter like we do. It drops down a bit because the days are a bit shorter and that, but it's not a dramatic change. So, you know, they are warm growers by definition. But the mass-produced hybrids have had some of the finickiness of the species bred out of them, basically, so they're more temperature tolerant now and ideally suited to growing in most homes. And then you hear people saying, well, the room mine are in, I don't heat in the winter and it goes down to 10 degrees. Well, strictly speaking, that's too cold. They might not die, but they're not going to grow, not at that temperature. And if you want them to bloom again, you have to grow some new leaves, so you have to have a growing season for them. If they can be kept warm enough, their whole life is a growing season. They don't have a rest or a quiet period where nothing much is going on. They will continuously grow. And those type that can be kept that warm, you know, 22 degrees plus daytime and nighttime if possible, with a slight difference, they'll just grow new leaves and spike. You know, they'll do well. Anyway, that's not what today's about. That's just what went on yesterday at the show. No dramatics with the journey or anything. We have had some in the past. Yeah, so that's that done. The next meeting is the boring one. It's an AGM. We have to do that every year where the committee and everything are re-voted back in, and anybody who's leaving the committee that leaves a post vacant that has to have nominations and all that sort of stuff is boring. But to brighten it up a bit, we have an auction. So we do actually have an auction. And that's where some people can get some very cheap, disgustingly cheap at times, some new orchids. And possibly orchids they might not have tried because, you know, they're not spending a lot of money, it's worth a go, that sort of thing. And on that subject, I've got a new orchid over here that was given to me by our president, who's not well, basically. His health is failing. And he's now getting to the point where he knows he can't look after all of his orchids anymore, so he's slowly but surely thinning them out. So I've got one here that was given to me yesterday. And it's effectively one I've had before. In the old grow room, again, for those that have been with the channel long enough to know there was a different grow room in another house, I had one of these before, and it was so big it had to live on the floor. And it was endearingly known as the bamboo bush. So those who've been around long enough will know exactly what I mean. But you'll have to have a good memory, it was a long time ago. Right, so that's that. Right, on the new people subject of subscribers and everything, thanks to everybody who is subscribed to the channel, but more importantly to me, quite honestly, is thanks to the people who watch the channel, leave the comments and keep the channel interesting, I would hopefully say, apart from what, you know, the actual video content, some people read through the comments and actually interact with people that make comments and things like that. This is all good stuff. As far as YouTube is concerned, it's interested in the number of people who watch the videos, because that's how they earn their money, because incorporated in the video are the adverts, unfortunately. But, you know, where else can you watch something where there's no adverts? You know, so, you know, it's almost like a way of life now. If you're watching a screen with some sort of something going on, chances are there's adverts lying around, you know, things like Netflix and, you know, all that sort of stuff. There's adverts everywhere. I mean, on YouTube you can go for the premium option, which means on YouTube you never see an advert again. That's an option some people take. I've taken that because I'm part of a family membership, so it doesn't actually cost me anything. And there's nothing worse than putting some music on. You've got your favourite track playing, you've sat back and you're engaging with the lovely music, and you want to buy a lawnmower? No, I don't. Go away. So adverts can be annoying, I know, but they are part of life. And unfortunately with YouTube, it's how the money changes hands. It's as simple as that. The advertisers pay YouTube to advertise their wares and possibly make some sales. Yeah? And those adverts get watched by people in and around the videos. When they are watched, the creator of that video gets some money from YouTube. So that's how it works basically. It's quite simple, you know, the adverts have to be watched, otherwise the creator doesn't get any money, any funds. I like to think of it not as money, as a reward. You know, where else can you go for free and have a lifetime of entertainment, whether it be nature, whether it be film clips, whether it be comedians standing up doing that, all that's for free on YouTube. So watching a few ads now and again is a small price to pay, or I think it is anyway. So thanks to all the people who watch the videos. The views are important. Don't forget that thumbs up. That's also important. YouTube gauges a video partly on that. Have you done it yet? You're watching? Come on, do it now. It's down the bottom there. Just click on it. It doesn't cost anything. It helps the channel grow. And also the financial support, I always mention that. So people who are patrons to the channel, the link's in the description if you're interested in a monthly donation to keep all this lot going. And also there's YouTube membership, which is a not very efficient way of making a donation because YouTube take quite a large chunk of it, whereas on the patron side it's entirely separate from YouTube, and they don't take anywhere near as much. So, you know, a £5 donation on Patreon gets a fair bit of that £5 to me. On YouTube I get 3 because they take 30% odd, so they take quite a large cut. So thanks for all of that stuff anyway, you know, it's all good stuff. And thanks to the people who also watch and support the other channel. All this, what I've just said, applies to that channel as well. And I know I've got quite a few people who are quite happily watching both channels and supporting both. Thanks. It's greatly appreciated. Right, so we've had a chat about Phalaenopsis inadvertently, simply while I was really saying what went on at the meeting yesterday. Now, I've had quite a few people. I've asked for possible suggestions for subject matter for the Sunday chat, and quite a few people have trouble with dealing with this problem, and so do I. You know, I'm not now going to become an expert and say I don't have this problem, because I do. It's a problem with orchids with little or no root systems, and how do you recover them? Well, quite honestly, the bottom line is it's trial and error, because different things work for different types of orchids. And with some orchids, there's very little works. So once they get themselves in that state, whether that's how you bought them, or whether through lack of care you've done it yourself. I mean, I've done it to orchids before now, not repotted them at the right time, and you know, the roots that they had die and there aren't any new ones, all that sort of thing. So how do you recover orchids with little or no root systems? Well, there is an old way of doing it that is documented in books and probably on some videos as well. It's called the bag method, and basically you clean up your orchid and make sure it is clean. Hang on, nuisance wants to go out again. You're just attracting attention, aren't you? Nuisance. Yes, you basically clean up the orchid, make sure it's got no tatty bits or anything like that. If there's dead roots or anything like that, they all need to be trimmed off, and get your orchid nice and trimmed and clean. Any manky leaves, take them off, and then you put it in a bag with some damp, not wet, damp sphagnum moss. and seal it up basically, and put it somewhere quite warm, but not in the sun. Don't get any sun on it. It'll heat the inside of that bag up beyond what a plant can tolerate. So just keep it somewhere warm and keep your eye on it. And those plants treated that way will often grow some new roots. It's often preceded by a new growth, and it's the new growth that will generate the new roots. And that applies to many, many orchids, not all. The new growths are where the new roots come from. The new growths push out, new roots come out from the base or just behind that portion of the plant. And most orchids are constantly replenishing. Any that have got pseudobulbs or canes tend to grow that way. So the new parts of the plant push on away from the original seedling element of that plant, the oldest part of the plant, and they gradually grow away from it, and they leave behind older bulbs that die back basically, and they progress, they move around, they move away, they'll move along a branch, and up the front of the plant is all the nice bright green leaves, the new growths, you know, whatever time of year they're going to come out on that plant, and the happy bit and the bit where most of the flowers are going to come from and all that sort of stuff. The older part, some of the canes and pseudobulbs will eventually lose their leaves. Some orchids lose their leaves every year, so if they don't grow new growth they haven't got any leaves. Those don't do very well. But yeah, so that they progress. Then you've got the others that they still do it, but it doesn't show so much. Things like a Masdevallia. It's a clump of growths, clump of leaves, you know, like it's almost like a clump of grass, you could say. And new growths can come up from anywhere round the outside and up through the middle. Sometimes you get a dieback section, the oldest part where the leaves will drop, but yeah, different styles. Now, what I usually do if I usually end up with a plant with little or no roots that I've bought or been given, and it's a new plant into the collection, and that's how I got it. So it immediately becomes what I call, and many others call, a rescue plant. You're trying to rescue it from death, which is the next step. And often your efforts are fruitless and the thing dies anyway. You will have to put up with this. It's not necessarily anything you've done wrong, and there is no exact method that will work for every set of conditions for every type of orchid. So I can't give you a one fix that will just work. But what I normally do is I clean up the plant, get rid of any dead roots. They're of no use. And if you pot them up with the dead roots on there, those roots are already dead. They're just going to rot, and they will provide a feeding ground for things in your pot that can damage your orchid, pathogens, you know, various things that just shouldn't be there on healthy tissue. So they're best gone. So I just clean mine up, and then I've got a mix that I call Let's Grow Some Roots. And it's basically small bark, perlite, and broken up into very small pieces, sphagnum moss, the New Zealand moss, the good stuff. And it's a mix of that. And the bark at that point is new, so it doesn't absorb much water. The water tends to run off it for the first 3 or 4 months, which is the period we'd be trying to rescue the plant in. The perlite holds some moisture, and so does the moss. And because the moss is broken up into small pieces, it's evenly distributed throughout the mix. So when you water it, you shouldn't be watering heavy on a rescue anyway, it's got no roots. What's it going to do with all that water? That pot needs to be kept just damp. You need to sit the plant on the top of it, or depending on, again, depends on the shape. Has it got pseudobulbs? You know, has it got canes? Is there a base that you can work with? Is it a single bulb? You know, all these factors come into it. But Yeah, just sit your plant on the top of that and secure it somehow, either with a stake and a clip. And a trick I use that I've used recently, I'll show you because it just happens to be handy, is a method of securing a plant with a stake, and the stake's not inside the pot, it's outside. And it's held absolutely rigid by some duct tape to the outside of the pot. And then one of the canes is clipped to that stake. And because of the shape of that particular plant, holding one cane is all that needs to be done. So that plant is now secure and doesn't wobble about. Yeah? And you do need to secure the plants firmly on the top of the media and don't wobble around. They need to be nice and secure, to sit still, because at some point you're going to get some very, very delicate root tips forming. Yeah, and if the plant moves, you pick it up to see if it needs watering, and it wobbles, you're probably going to damage those delicate root tips, and then you've lost your new roots because you've damaged them, and they're precious at that stage. Every one counts, every single one. You might not get many. So that's what I do. And the other thing you need to bear in mind is, because you've got a virtually rootless plant, it's not going to hydrate through the roots because it hasn't got any. So you don't want to keep that media wet. It needs to be just damp. That's it. And that's quite difficult to achieve, and that is helped by the moss, because the moss will allow the water and the moisture to spread throughout the pot. Yeah, and what I usually do is I just put a trickle of water around the edge of the pot so that I know some water's gone in there, but I don't soak the pot by any means. You could get away with spraying the surface of the pot every now and again. Use a clear pot, pick it up, have a look. It's got a bit of moss in it. When the moss is dry, it's a straw colour. You can see when it's wet, you can see when it's dry. So don't put too much water in there at that stage. And that's what I do. And depending on the plant and whether it has any roots at all, will depend on the mix, the variables. If it's got no roots at all, it'll probably be a bit heavier on the moss to make sure it does hold some moisture. You've also got the smallest pot possible. Again, what do you want a big pot for? There's no roots. But when it grows some roots, you can move it on. Yeah. So smallest pot you can get the thing in, touching the sides if necessary, and that might help stabilise it as well. So there is no one trick that'll fix all of this. The best thing is not cure, it's prevention. Don't let your plant get in that state in the first place. So make sure that your media doesn't go off. Make sure you repot on some form of regular basis depending on the media you've used. If you've got an orchid in pure bark and some perlite, perlite doesn't go off, it doesn't degrade. So you don't have to worry about that. Bark does eventually, but it takes a long time. You're looking at years. And quite honestly, I've seen Phalaenopsis in a pot for 6 years in the same bark. And that bark still doesn't crumble when you press it. It's still got substance. So depends on the mix. If you've got sphagnum moss in your pot, then that will go off. And when it goes off, it starts to generate acidity, which is not very good for any root systems. I'm not going any more than 2.5 years with sphagnum moss, at which point I would want to replace it. And the next thing to do is obviously when you do get some roots, if you get some roots, you're in a tiny pot. And it would be nice for the plant to have room to expand. And it might be okay to literally turn the plant upside down with your hand over the top of the pot, gently lift the pot off, yeah, and get a slightly bigger pot, put it over the top. So we're still working upside down here. So you've got your new pot empty, bit bigger, put it over the top like that, and then gently bring it back up the right way again and put some new media down the edge. So that plant has hardly been disturbed at all, but you've given it some room to grow. So that's not a bad thing to do as well. And yeah, all I can do is wish people success. Just try not to, I know it's difficult, I've done it, I've actually done it in front of a vendor and they didn't like it, and I said, well, do you want the sale or not? I'm not buying that. It's more so with Oncidium types, quite honestly. They're in a pot that you can't see through, and their roots are already dead. The plant isn't yet, it's living off its resources and it looks pretty good, it's got a nice flower spike, but effectively the roots are gone. And basically I've done that in front of a vendor. You know, I've just gently put my hand over the top of the pot, turned it upside down and lift the pot up. What are you doing? So I'm checking that you're not selling me a plant with no roots. Well, you shouldn't do that, all the media could have fallen off. I said, yeah, but it didn't. And if it had and I'd wrecked it, then I'd have bought it, you know. And as it happens, it hasn't got a good root system, so you can have it back. Thank you. They don't like it. They don't like it at all. But then a lot of the vendors, you know, especially with the Oncidium types and the intergenerics and things like that, they're buying them in from the mass producers. I'm on about UK now. They're buying them in from mass producers in, you know, Germany, Netherlands, places like that. And they don't spend money on media. Their goal is to get that plant out and get it bought. Well, they don't want to put nice fresh media in it just before they sell it, do they? So it's got old media in it. And like I said, it may have been in various warehouses, in the back of a lorry, back of a trailer on a boat. It could have had a lot of mistreatment by the time you get it. And the shop that you might buy it from, and I include garden centres in that, because most garden centres don't know how to water orchids. They go round pouring water into all their plants every morning, and those orchids are already soaking wet because they haven't used the water up from 2 weeks ago, and they just drown them basically, you know. Unfortunately, although the plant roots have been drowned and have long since died, the plant isn't dead yet. So it still can look quite good and people still buy them. And they take them home to die, which is sad. But and it can put, what the annoying thing is, it can put people off. You know, you buy a nice orchid with blooms on and you get it home and then it starts to fail and you think, what am I doing wrong, when it was failing before you bought it, basically. So it happens. Anyway, rescuing orchids is and it also varies on environment. Most orchids, apart from real cool growers, need some extra warmth to keep them going, keep them happy. I mean, it's like I said, Phalaenopsis are happy at 23-4 degrees plus daytime temperatures. They don't need high humidity to be happy, not Phalaenopsis anyway. Most of those would be happy at 60-65% humidity, which isn't high. I mean, there are some orchids that like to grow at 27-28 degrees, and they want 80-85% humidity. You're not going to do that in your front room or your kitchen, that's for sure. You do it in your shower while you're in there showering, and then you come out and leave the door open and it drops back down again. So it's the humidity that's the problem. But rescue orchids would like to be relatively humid, comfortably warm and out of bright light, so that they can just tick over, concentrate hopefully on getting a new growth going. I mean, if you think, you repot a Cymbidium, you take off 3 or 4 of the leafless old bulbs so that you can get it in a nice tight pot, because they like their roots tight. And those old bulbs, if you clean them up and just sit them on top of some media, you can just leave them as a bulb on the bench for 2 months. But get them on some media, they will eventually grow a new growth most of the time, and then they'll produce some roots. But you're looking at 4 years before that will bloom, if not 5. And you've got to think, am I the type of person that wants to look after that for that amount of time before I ever see any blooms? Or do I want to go to a nursery or a show and pay whatever and come home with one with flowers already on it. And those are your choices. But it's the same with rescue plants. They're often quite a long way from blooming. Right, let me just let nuisance in again. Thank you. There's a silver collection over there for opening and closing the door for you constantly. Go back to sleep. Nuisance. Right, while I've got my coffee down, we'll have a look at my new plant. For those of you who've worked out what it is already from the description, well done. Now it looks a bit of a mess, and it's in far too big a pot. We will deal with that, but we won't be dealing with it straight away, simply because there are no new growths coming from the base. Now what does it say in here? Summer, warm, rain, low rainfall. Well, that's a description of where it would come from. And then we've got maximum summer 23, minimum summer 15. Well, that's perfect for in here then, isn't it? This has come out of the book, I suspect, now in the guise, 80 odd, you know, probably. You might use the internet, I don't know. And then it's got winter 14 to 21, minimum 3 to 9 degrees. So it needs a cool winter rest, effectively. I knew that anyway. I'm just reading what's on the label, that's all. And it is Dendrobium Hancockii. And it has lovely flowers, and it has lots of flowers that are opening at the moment, one of which has a mealybug on it. I didn't notice that when I took it off him. Right, I shall have to have a good look over this then. Hopefully that was just an odd one, moved from one of his other plants perhaps. A quick scan, there's another one there. A quick scan, there are some mealybugs on this plant, so I will spray it before they get out of hand. Now, the one that I had before got so infested with scale I couldn't shift them, and it ended up getting thrown away. I don't think somebody else had it because it was so bad, so I lost it due to scale. It will be unlikely to lose a plant due to mealybugs, but you can certainly lose a plant to scale if you don't get rid of them. So I'm just checking this over now that I've seen the mealybugs. What else have we got on here? I can see one there, quite a large one. There's several there. So it needs a good spray, so I will do that. But the blooms on it are lovely. They're lovely golden colour. Let's see if I can find a couple of reasonable ones. Most of them are buds that are just opening. So something like that. A nice golden yellow. They are fragrant, given the right change of light. It's usually a change of light for fragrance. It's a honey vanilla-y type of fragrance with a hint of spice. Well, that's how I'm going to describe it. And this plant has an unusual growth habit, which is why it got nicknamed the bamboo bush. And if that, oh, that cane's clipped. If I take that clip off, I can show you what I mean. Now, this, unlike some other dendrobiums, is its growth habit, not kikis. So if I separate this cane out from the others, with the big mealybug near the top, there, now you can see, it's a cane with canes growing out of the side. So coming down this quite large cane, we've got a cane coming out here where my finger is, following it up, another one here, 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 and the cane that's growing on. So it branches, it has a branching growth habit, and that's how it grows. Those are not kikis, they don't grow roots, they're part of the plant, which is why I think, given the long slender nature of the leaves, and the long thin canes that branch, that's why I nicknamed it the bamboo bush, because that's what it looks like to me. Right, so I suspect, I mean, look at that. One of mealybugs and scales' favourite hiding places, the inside of a clip. Absolutely infested. So we will get on, we will get the clips and the canes off, we will get it outside and give it a good spray, systemic, and then we will give it another one. And then I need to, despite the fact it's coming into bloom, I'm going to take that out of its pot. I'm not going to do it now because it's in such a big pot. I suspect there's an awful lot of media that hasn't got any roots associated with it, and it will fall off. But this needs to go in a much smaller pot. It needs to be a lot tighter. And it's not a happy plant as such, because there are no new growths, and at this time of year there should be. But hopefully we will bring it back. Yeah, there's a lot of mealybugs on here, so I do need a systemic spray on it. Get right into the plant, and feels quite light actually. I don't know when it was last watered, but we'll get some feed into it as well and get a bit of strength back into it. But yeah, as I said, the fragrance is nice. So some black spots on some of the blooms over here. What's that? Is that aphids? No, that's some type of mould. So it needs work. It needs some work, but I sort of look at it, you know, the guy did seem a bit sad that he's now having to lose some of his plants, but you know, it may come to all of us one day. So anyway, a new plant, Dendrobium hancockii, and a bit of an infestation on it that we will hopefully be able to deal with. As long as it's not scale. Now some people would say, is it okay to spray a plant with blooms? Well, what do you think the alternative is? Let them breed, let them infest the whole plant? Because that will do it the world of good, won't it? So if the spray partially damages the blooms, well then so be it. You save the plant. The blooms will come again. So don't ever avoid treating a plant because it's got blooms on it. And in this case, mealybugs love to go on the back of the blooms where the petals and sepals join. They love that bit there because they can suck into all the juices of the bloom and stay away from predators and things. Predators? Yeah, it doesn't work, I know they're there. Anyway, so that's my new plant. And yes, things to come this week, unknown. As I say, I'm in a bit of a state of flux because my mind wants to get this bonsai staging done and get it out in the garden and get my trees sorted out and get the staging sorted out and be in a position where I can start hardening off the cymbidiums to spend the summer outside. So my mind is there at the moment. Other things that have changed, I normally stand that side with the camera over here so that people can watch the birds on the bird feeder through the glass. Well, the way I've rearranged the shelves, you wouldn't be able to do that, and you definitely can't do it now because I've packed the feeders away for the summer. So I finished up the feed that I had, so that the bags were all empty, and I've put the bird table with the feeders off to one side now, and they will stay there until the colder weather starts, mid-October, end of October. Then we'll start feeding again. But we may well get a new bird table because that one's falling apart. I mean, it was the cheapest thing I could find at the time because I didn't know whether the birds would come. They did, so I was pleased at it. I think it was only 20-something quid. But we'll worry about that at the other end of the year, not this end. There's plenty of natural food around for the birds now. And I've noticed they've started getting on my bonsai trees, the little blue tits and cold tit, and they go over my trees. So they're picking off aphids and things. That saves me spraying the trees. They're doing the job for me. and in doing so they're getting their natural food. And when the youngsters are around and the adults are teaching the youngsters how to feed, they're showing them where the food is, and it doesn't come dangling in a container off a bird table. No good teaching the youngsters that. Bird table might be gone as it is now. So there we go. Chat about rescuing orchids. It's not easy, but you just need to clean them up basically and get them sitting on some media. And don't worry too much about watering, because there are no roots. You know, once you start getting some roots you can think about watering again and feeding, so just damp, just lightly damp. And I've seen some people, once they've set their plant up and staked it so that it's rigid, they actually put the whole plant inside a polythene bag and just clip it so that it's got nice high humidity and a self-contained environment. A tip, if you do that, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea at all. But if you do it, blow the bag up. Why is that good? Well, first of all, it gets the polythene away from the plant, which you need to do anyway. What else does it do? What do you breathe out? What do plants take in during the day? Rather than just normal air. Yeah? They'll be swapping that air out anyway. I mean, they use carbon dioxide and chuck out oxygen and then turn it round the other way. The difference between the day and the night, it just literally goes round the other way. But they take in one, push out the other, and then at night switches around the other way. And they take in moisture through their little holes in the leaves as well. So by having them in a bag, you've contained some humidity so that they can take on board some moisture, and that will help stop them dehydrate, which can stop the bulbs shriveling. Yeah, don't put them in bright light, not ridiculously bright light, and for hell's sake don't get the bag in the sun. The temperature will rocket. So there we go. It's, Sunday chat. I'm a bit disappointed that plant's covered in bugs, but hopefully I can deal with it safely. But it's not going near my plants. It might even go outside for a couple of days, let the treatment work for a bit. It's not cold at the moment, so put it somewhere sheltered. Anyway, it will be a nice plant one day, I hope, and that'll be totally dependent on what's in the pot, not what's sticking out the top of it. It has got a good blooming, I'll give it that, and we'll see what we can do with it. Hopefully, it's not exactly a rescue plant, but it could be. When I get it out of the pot, it might instantly become a rescue plant. Depends how long it's been in the pot. He said he bought it 4 years ago and it just had 3 little canes, so it's been grown on reasonably well since then. But this plant's capable of being well over a metre. The canes can grow over a metre long, and it expands sideways due to the branching effect as well. So I can't say it's a well grown plant, because it ought to be quite a bit bigger than that really. And a lot more leaves as well. There's quite a few leafless canes on there. That does happen naturally again, but they're not getting replaced. Without any new growth coming from the bottom, there aren't going to be any new leaves, and the older leaves are going to drop, and the less leaves there are, the less photosynthesis, the more unhealthy the plant can become. So it needs to get some new growth going. We will work on it. The other thing I wanted to show you is we have a bloom coming soon, and it's going to be a big one. Happens to be right by the camera as well. This is a coleogeny. That's a big bud. It's going to be a fair sized bloom. And this is, what is it? It's a cross, I think. It's oh yeah, it's this one. It's Usitana crossed with Salmoniana or something like that. And it does have a second bud on the spike, and I think it might end up being sequential, and it'll put all the energy into this bud. This bud will open and last a nice long time, and then as this flower fades, maybe the other bud will swell and extend and open. Unknown at the moment. And yeah, again, this was a young plant bought to grow on. I wasn't expecting it to bloom, but it is. We will have that soon. I would suggest that will be open in the not too distant future. And another one I said we'd look at this weekend, I will have to get down. And to get it down I need to move the plant, and the only place I can put it is on the bench with that other one. We'll stick it right up the other end so that it's out of the way. And it's this black hair type dendrobium hybrid. It's got no name, it's got no ID, but it has gone a bit mad. It grew two new canes. It grew this new cane here, yeah, which is now blooming, and then it grew this one, and some idiot, no names mentioned, didn't get a stake in the plant and pull it in as it was young and flexible. If I pull that in upright now, it'll snap. So I'm having to put up with it. And as all these blooms open, the weight on the end of that cane is going to grow and grow and grow to the point where this plant, well, it won't stand up now. It's certainly not going to stand up when all those blooms open. I have never seen a black hair type cane with that many blooms on when the blooms are big ones like this. Some of the black hair type blooms are not as large as this. So this is the bloom that's opened the most. I'll see if I can get that in front of the lens, but it's not really pointing in the right direction. So that's the one that's opened the most, and you can see by the size of my hand these are large blooms. Yeah, gorgeous colour in the centre and a lovely pristine white. So and we've got three blooms that will open nicely on this cane because they're all facing in different directions. What this lot are going to do, I really don't know. So we've even got this secondary bud a bit lower down the cane. Those three blooms have got to go somewhere. Anyway, that's that one. It's a pity I haven't got an ID for it. It's probably got some predictable things in it, something like Dendrobium lawii, infundibulum, and the one I've tried and can't grow, which I can't remember at the moment. Formosum, I think it is. But, you know, it's going to have black hair types that have got those type of blooms on, and it'll be a hybrid. It may well be a primary cross as well. I don't know. Once you've lost an ID, you can look at the blooms and you can spend ages on the internet saying, yep, that's the one. Or is it that one? The trouble is I don't know how big. That one looks a bit bigger than that one, but I don't know whether that's bigger than mine. You'll go round in circles and you drive yourself doolally. It's almost impossible once you get into the hybrids. In theory, I suppose it could be a species, but if it was, I'd have probably found it by now. So that was the other one I wanted to show you. New blooms are going to be thin on the ground now because without buds and spikes starting up on the plants, obviously there won't be new blooms. The only other one that's going to open in the, well, probably the next 2, maybe 3 weeks is the Brassia that's pushing on nicely, the spikes extending the buds, so that'll be a new bloom. It's not a first time bloomer, but it'll be some new blooms to look at. Yeah, so I think that's a thanks for joining me for my Sunday waffle, and if you're still here at the end and you still haven't subscribed and hit that thumbs up, yet another reminder to do so. It would be good. What? You got food and you got drink. Well, if you're going to sit there, you can come and say hello properly. Come and say hello, because people like to see you while you're still around. You're an old fella, aren't you? Eh? 20 he is now. So he's slowed up a bit. He's got a bit slower in his age. But he's still eating okay and drinking fine. So, and he still runs up the stairs and jumps up on the chair and then onto my workstation where the laptop is. So his mobility is still pretty good. But he's a noisy devil. He shouts a lot, don't you? Eh? I wouldn't be without him. Come on then, go and find somewhere and go back to sleep. Ugh. Yes? I think the world of him. And I'll see you next time. Tomorrow is my day off. I don't normally film on Monday. However, I do sometimes film for the other channel on Monday. It's an orchid rest as far as videos are concerned. I don't film orchid videos on Monday. I take a day off. And I'm hoping this week to get all this timber stained and then that staging put together and outside and sort the trees and the garden out. There will be videos involved with that. They will all be on the other channel because they're not to do with orchids, it's to do with the garden and the bonsai. So I've got quite a few ready-made videos for the other channel. I haven't necessarily got so many on the go on this channel, but we will find something to do. I've still got some repotting to do, and we've got the new plant to sort out as well at some point. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you've enjoyed it. Leave a comment please, by all means, and you get an answer on this channel. I always leave a reply on comments. I don't just ignore them, and we will move on from there, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.